We're going to talk about the types of delegated powers. And the delegated powers are those powers that are given to the national government. Um, and there are three types of them, and this video is going to cover the three types. So those are expressed, implied, and inherent. So the first ones we're going to look at are the expressed powers. And another name for that another name for express powers is enumerated powers. And when you hear that word enumerated, you should think numbered because they are literally numbered or listed or expressed specifically in the Constitution. And so those are found in Article 1, which is about the legislative branch, Section 8, clauses 1 through 18. There are 18 clauses. Well, actually, we'll say 1 through 17 because 18 is actually one of the implied, or where the implied powers are found. So anyway, Article 1, Section 8 is where we find the expressed powers, also known as the enumerated powers, because literally we have them numbered out. This slide shows actually the different types of powers that Congress has during peacetime and wartime. And so hopefully as you're watching these videos over federalism, you have a copy of your Constitution with you. And having it set right beside you so you can take a look at these. So expressed powers are just the ones that are specifically written out in the Constitution. The power to collect taxes. And if you remember, that's one of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, the power to regulate foreign and interstate commerce. That takes care of that interstate trade problem that they had. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 12, to raise and support an army. We had issues there, not being able to force the states to give troops. If you notice in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 9, to create courts inferior to the Supreme Court. So one of the powers they give was to create additional courts for that. So we have the power to coin money, which was an issue during that period of time too, because you had all the states that were creating their own money. So these are the expressed or written out powers. If we want to define the expressed or the powers that the executive branch has, we'd look in Article 2. So the next one, implied powers. This is found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. So Article 1, Section 8, once again, is that list of expressed powers. And we get to the very last one, and it says that Congress has the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. And it's also known as the elastic clause. If you look over there on the right-hand side, the expressed power from Article 1, Section 8 says that they have the power to raise an army. Well, if they have the power to raise the army, shouldn't they also have the power to create a draft, to develop new armored tanks, to construct military bases? None of those three are specifically outlined in the Constitution, but because they have the power to raise the army, they should also have the power to do those things. They have the expressed power to collect taxes. So shouldn't they also be able to have a organization that collects those and takes care of that? And that is where we get the IRS. If they are allowed to collect taxes, shouldn't they be allowed to create a bank or punish those who fail to pay their taxes? None of those are expressed powers, but we can imply that they have those as an extension of one of those expressed powers. The power to regulate commerce. Shouldn't they also have the power to prohibit certain goods being imported and exported? So what an implied power means, it's not specifically written out, it's not word for word, but because they have certain express powers, we're going to go ahead and say yes, of course. In order to be able to collect taxes and borrow money, it just makes sense that you should be able to create a national bank. And it's also known as the necessary and proper clause just because that's the words that are actually used in the clause. And it's saying that they can do basically anything that they can think of that they can attach to one of those express powers. They also call it the elastic clause, and that's really simple. If you think about the characteristics of elastic stretches. So in Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1 through 17, we're going to specifically write out the powers that they have. Then they're going to add this last one, the necessary and proper clause. And basically what it does is it stretches the powers of Congress and allows them to do a lot more things than just what is expressly written in the Constitution. And the third delegated power, the third type of power that goes to the national government, is an inherent power. And inherent powers are powers that the national government has just because it's a government. They're not necessarily written anywhere, and they're not even implied, but because we exist as a nation and we are able to because we exist as a nation, let me just stop there. Some examples of that: the national government has to be able to control immigration, and they have to be able to establish diplomatic relations with other countries. We have to engage in foreign relations. And none of those powers are specifically expressed, but because, once again, we exist as a nation, we should be allowed to regulate who's coming in and out of the country and be able to have diplomatic relations with other countries.